Every idea, every story starts with a spark, a tiny light that glows. But to speak up, to be heard, to innovate takes courage. We're here to ignite that tiny spark. We're here to foster Canadian voices, our narratives, our ideas. We're here to spark courage. Our logo is a showcase for our culture, our storytellers, our innovators, and it reflects our creators and communities. The Spark is a catalyst to push boundaries, to drive the future, and for Canadian voices to be heard on a global stage.
When you're writing your screenplay, you don't want to have to think about formatting. Final Draft 12 automatically formats your screenplay to industry standards, allowing you to focus on what you do best, writing. Final Draft, used on 95% of all productions, contains many features that make your writing process easier and more efficient. Writing your script is as quick and easy as hitting Tab and Enter. Don't bother reaching for that mouse. Use Smart Type to cut down on keystrokes by auto-filling commonly used names, locations, and more. Use the Beatboard and Outline Editor to do all your story planning in one place for easy access throughout the writing process. Plan set pieces, store character research, and much more. The Beatboard gives you total freedom to organize your ideas as they come to you, all within your Final Draft file. The Outline Editor gives you a high-level view of your script, allowing you to easily plan and preview your scenes. Insert images on title pages, in the script, or even in the Beatboard to help visualize your story. Collaborate simultaneously with your writing partners in real time, around the corner or anywhere in the world. Use track changes to see and accept or reject edits made by collaborators to the script. Use alternate dialogue to store as many different versions of lines as you can imagine. Night mode lets you work in an environment that's easier on the eyes. Focus mode gives you distraction-free writing, hiding tools when they're not needed. Final Draft, the #1 selling screenwriting software worldwide, also offers the Final Draft mobile app for iPhone and iPad, making creativity truly portable. Bring your story to life with Final Draft 12. It all starts with a script.
Hey folks, welcome to the Future of Film Showcase 2021. My name is Samah Ali and I am the Industry Director for the festival. Today we are here for our inaugural panel, The Future of Equity in Film, and we will soon get into a very meaningful and pertinent discussion with the folks who I am sharing this space with. I'd like to start off, though, by acknowledging the land on which we gather and organize. And it is the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, and of course the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is home to many Indigenous people, and territorial acknowledgement can demonstrate a coming to awareness and provoke thought and reflection, all of which are essential in beginning to establish a reciprocal relationship. Now, this acknowledgement should not function as a closure, resignation, or acceptance of the structural conditions of settler colonialism that remain effective today. The Future of Film Showcase will continue to ask what it means for us to keep an open spirit of sustained inquiry into the complexities of our context, not only in this space, but also in this country. FOFs would like to thank our presenting partner, CBC GEM, our public funders, the Government of Canada, Telefilm, and the ArtFest Business Arts Program. We would also like to thank our media partners, Playback, Touchwood PR, and Astrolab Studios, all for their unwavering support of FOFs and our festival industry program. Now, since this panel is unpacking equity in its relationship to film, it would be naive of us to say that we can have all of those necessary discussions today. And unfortunately, we only have 1 hour to share with each other and only a 10-minute question period at the end for our panelists. So I recommend everybody watching at home to put their comments in the chat and be able to ask questions towards the end for anything you may want to ask myself and the other panelists in the room. Our team will take a look at it and pass it on to us. And also, it's important for us to acknowledge that right now we don't have an ASL interpreter in the room. Unfortunately, they could not be present today. However, we do ask for your patience. This conversation will be not only recorded, but also posted after this session with full ASL interpretation and captioning. So just hold on, we'll get it up very soon. And we do apologize for that. I'm honored to introduce the folks sharing the space with me today because I have not only the privilege of speaking with them, but also getting into a very, very meaningful discussion that sometimes cannot be safe, but I hope we not only are able to curate that space today, but also be honest with what we have to say. We have makeup artist Mikey Elliott in the room. We have choreographer and intimacy coordinator Christina Jazar, and powerhouse actor, model, director, and producer, not only a writer as well, Keisha Williams. Of course, we have the wonderful people behind stage who made this event possible, and we have to shout them out. Shout out to the FOFs team, because without them, we would not be able to be here for this very juicy discussion. Now, I want to first kick off this conversation by offering the stage to the folks who are in this room to share a little bit more about their work and who they are and how they got here today. Keisha, I'm going to start it off with you, so take it over, beloved.
All right. So my name is Keisha Williams. As Samah let you all know, I am an actor, a unionized actor, so I'm with ACTRA. And that has been recent, so I'm happy to talk about that a little bit as we get into things. I'm also a director, and so yeah, I experiment with both sides of the camera. Maybe experiment is like a bad word because it sounds like I'm new at this, but I always feel like I'm playing and experimenting, so we'll go with that.
Beautiful. Christina?
Yeah, always learning and growing. I think we're always, that's the joy of this business. It's always changing and evolving, and we want to think in new ways. But anyway, we'll get into that. I'm Christina, and I started out as a dancer for many years, my whole life, and theater was where my heart was. And then theater brought me into film and TV. So I was a dancer on there, actor. And most recently in 2019, I started my journey to intimacy coordination, which I hopefully will talk a lot about today because I'm super excited about it. But yeah, my choreography has brought me to shows like The Strain, working with Guillermo del Toro, and I just did Nightmare Alley with him, and working with all kinds of choreographers within Toronto. And yeah, so hopefully we can discuss in greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mikey.
Tego seego, Mikey ni yungiats, ganika hako ni wako hunjore dahno waganyato, oswego ganagale dahno jitkalunda tukitalo. My name is Mikey. I am Mohawk Nation Turtle Clan. I'm from Six Nations and currently working and living in Toronto. And yeah, I'm a professional makeup artist, occasionally hairstylist. But primarily makeup. And I've been working, I think, for about 4 years now, a little over 4 years professionally, and hopefully to keep on being able to create. I'm very, very happy, and I don't want to say privileged because I'm not privileged, but I'm thankful to be able to work in this industry and be able to do my art and continue to do so and be able to make money off of it. I think it's such a fun job, and I love doing it. So I'm glad to be able to make a living off of it.
I am glad you're here. I'm glad you're able to make a living off of it because it is so hard to be able to do what you love all the time. And I'm glad that all the folks here not only have experience of doing what they love, but also can recognize the difficulties of doing what they love as well, and the space that is currently created for them to enter into it. And my first question is really for everyone, but I'm going to start off with you, Mikey, because we already have the mic. What are some of the intricacies of your job that others on set would not know you do?
Well, I feel like a lot of people don't really consider the fact that my job is a lot of behind the scenes. Like, I feel like not a lot of my job is actually putting makeup onto people. A lot of it is actually in the prep work, like getting into creating these characters and creating these people who are going to be shown on screen. And a lot of that is involved with a lot of discussions with a lot of different people, a lot of different departments in film. Like, I'm talking to all of the departments, I'm talking to the actor to make sure they feel comfortable with what I'm doing to them. I'm talking to the director a bunch to make sure I'm like creating that vision, creating that character that they want to portray on the screen. But I'm also talking to people, like I'm talking to the costumes and wardrobe, like I'm talking to lighting to make sure our look is going to work with how it's going to be lit for that scene. I'm making sure it doesn't look too matchy for colors, in terms of like if something's in the background and it doesn't work with like the makeup. Like, there's so much things to really consider in the behind the scenes that isn't just putting makeup on someone's face, to kind of create these characters that it's so wild. I actually never really thought about it until I kind of started working in it, how many people that we're all like talking to. Like, film is such a like a unit. Like, we're all different people kind of creating this one project. Like, it's so many different pieces that all kind of have to come together to make sure the film is told the way it's supposed to be told.
I didn't even think about lighting.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's
God.
crazy. Lighting can change so much. Like, especially if like, say you have like, it's like a nighttime scene and they're lit by like a street light. And if it's a little bit of a bluer light, you had a red lip, it's going to look black. Or if you have a red light, if someone's at like a stop sign or something, all the red is just going to wash out. So it won't even look like you're wearing any makeup. So sometimes even actually in films, you'll put on like a blue lipstick. So make it sure that there's some contrast for that one spot, just for that one shot, to make sure that you still know that there's lipstick there and that it doesn't just disappear. It's wild, eh?
Wow. I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
Wow. Christina, what about you?
Yeah, similar. I love the conversation about film being a collaborative job and how so many of us interact with different departments. And as an intimacy coordinator, from this angle, for sure, it's all about coordination and working with all the different departments. But I think what I want to mention that I bet a lot of people don't, well, I think a lot of people don't know about this particular role anyway. There's so much to talk about, but coming from it from a choreographer's point of view, from a dancer and movement, I was so attracted to that side of it, as well as advocating for people and making sure everybody involved in the scene is safe and all of those things. But what I don't think people understand going into it, it's about 80-90% paperwork and prep and conversations and writers, and making sure that everyone understands where the actor performers' consent and boundaries are. So it's a huge part of that, and such a small part on my role in the creative process. The director has a vision and we're just collaborating with them to see that vision through. I'm not creating my own. And also working with the performers' consent and boundaries, like I said, making sure that it all aligns. And then again, sets, making sure it's safe, working with lighting, and camera crew as well, making sure that nothing on the actor is being seen that isn't in their rider, isn't wanting to be seen in simulating sex or nudity scenes. But yeah, so a lot of, like you said, prep work and yeah, just coming into the job that way.
Christina, I'm glad that you mentioned paperwork of intimacy coordinators, because that was the first thing that came to my mind, like writers and nudity writers. And I just find them like so hilarious, but also so necessary, like, and so useful and helpful in the process. But yeah, that moment of like not being in the scene, but talking and thinking about the scene, and like sometimes in very like, you know, what is the word? Just kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like very crudely almost sometimes, because it's like, okay, well, this happens and this action happens, and it has to be specific in that way, and it's helpful to be specific in that way, but it is also just so funny to like talk
and
about.
I love asking the directors or the writers to, you know, describe to me how in the words they want to use, because desexualizing the language when choreographing, I think is very important, because we want to watch for trigger words and we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable. So I have sort of that vocabulary and the skill of, you know, whether we're talking about touch, instead of saying you're going to grab someone and make it more passionate, we're going to, you know, use bone level touch, or, and it's really thought of like choreography, you know, there's language for dance, and we're bringing that language of intimacy to, I don't want to say a safer place, but a more respectful, more aware.
Hopefully, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can go ahead and answer your question, Samah. My bad. I just got really excited about.
No, absolutely. Writers. We love the stories and the tangents. Absolutely. That was really important. Keisha, go on.
Exactly. So yeah, I was going to say something along the same lines. As an actor, I feel like, you know, obviously my main relationship is with the director, and that's where I'm getting my information. But I do, you know, speak and work with so many other people, and those people also affect the space and how I feel in the space. So for sure, like connecting with makeup artists is helpful and gives me more information to work with. And the same thing with connecting with intimacy coordinators, especially because we're able to talk so far in advance from the scene. So it's not just we get there and then everything, you know, action and we're all going. It's really like there's just so much work as an actor that goes into research, that goes into scene analysis, and you know, just really getting yourself ready in so many ways to play the role. I think in my case as well, there's often things that I have to take care of that are sometimes and hopefully taken care of on stage. So on set rather. So I speak of things like having to do my hair and having to change my nails for certain roles and things like this. That often falls on me, and I think that that's something that folks don't necessarily think about. And that is generally supposed to be covered by production. But what ends up happening, like when you look like me or you get particular roles that require a particular look, that's different than I go about my life in, it means that it costs me more in time, and also obviously financially as well, and energy as well.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy hearing you talk about that, because I hear stupid amounts of stories from BIPOC people being like, yeah, I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to go get my hair done before coming to set, and none of that was covered, and I had to pay for that out of pocket and then go to set. Like, crazy. It's honestly like gross, to be honest. Like, how it isn't covered yet. Like, no one's thinking about those things.
Yeah. Is there a reason? It's really hard to go on set and then see people who don't look like you in the makeup chair and in the hair chair, getting all kinds of things done to their hair, color and curl and all this stuff. And I'm just like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
But the, you know, folks know nothing about retwisting looks. So I have to take care of that by myself. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think of like, I just remember Tati Gabriel from Sabrina the Teenage Witch, like when that GIF came out of her doing her own hair, like, you know, like who does your hair? Because it's iconic. Like everybody talks about her hair in that show. and you just see her doing it herself. And I'm like, wow, like it just was like, it gave me, I mean, it's beautiful to watch and wonderful to respect that extra craft, but it's also just so sad that we have to do that, or like what did that conversation look like where she wasn't able to get support?
I don't even want to know what that conversation looked like.
You know, like
yeah.
I was just like, okay, well, I can do it better. And they were like, yeah, cool, great, you know?
Do it.
And it's just like, well, like, how can we really look at this problem from an equity lens, right? Because there's so many answers I have, but I'm sure we can get to that.
Oh yeah.
Well, Mikey, I want to get your opinions on this, because most actors have to go through your chair before they even touch the production stage. So you play a pretty vital role on people's confidence on set. So how do you make folks feel comfortable? How do you accommodate for different skin types, different skin textures, skin colors? Like, how do you incorporate that in everything else that you're doing as your role as a makeup artist?
Like, I feel like that's a very big part of my job, is like making sure the talent feels comfortable. Like, that's another thing that like people don't really consider, is how much of my job is actually like not only like knowledge on how to accommodate for certain skin textures and skin tones, and like not really accommodate isn't the word, but like be able to work on all different skin types and all different skin tones, but also personability is a huge thing, to be able to just like make sure people feel comfortable with you doing their makeup or doing their hair, because like it's very important to people. Like, it's kind of like you're in people's space, you're in people's like personal bubble, and seeing things that sometimes they don't let anyone see, and kind of like helping them decide and create this character that they're going into. It's super important to me as a makeup artist. Like, I feel like you can't really call yourself a makeup artist if you're not even able to work on all skin tones. And it's crazy how many stories I still hear to this day. And I still hear like to this day. And I actually went on to set one time where I was doing a photo shoot, and I didn't know the makeup artist assist that they brought on to help me, because they called in someone to do the second half of the shoot. And so they came in, and I was asking them to get the model ready, and he was dark skinned, and she looked at him and kind of was like a little bit confused, and then turned over to me and was like, I don't have any darker foundations. Like, what can I do? And I was like, I just like froze in the second. I was like, cool, I'm gonna do his makeup, and then you can go over here and start over here. And I'm like, it's crazy to this day still seeing people like not have the shade range, not have the knowledge and know-how to work on different skin tones.
I just was gonna, I'm so curious, because like when we come in with choreography, whatever style, whatever period, we do our research, right? Like, what does that look like? What is that movement? How will we interpret it? So do you guys, do you folks get the, like, who you're working on that day, images, names? Because I just would assume you would know who is coming in, who your crew call, who your cast is. I Google everybody that I see on the list when I'm coming, even if I'm not working with them, because I want to, you know, as much as I can anyway. So that not to you, obviously, the other makeup artists.
Absolutely. Like, I always try to make sure I have like pictures, because it affects my job, like to know what I need to be using, and just having that plan ahead of time, it kind of helps things go faster, and time is money on set. So I need to be able to go quick. But in that instance, it wasn't a film job per se. Like, that one was just like a quick like ad photo shoot.
Right.
And sometimes if you're called on last minute, those things can't really happen. But that's the other part, is that as a makeup artist, you need to be bringing all of your tools and all of your colors, all of your tools, to be able to work on whoever, especially if you don't know who you're going to be working on. Bring everything to be able to work on whoever you need to. Like, you should see me walking into set sometimes, if I don't have any like criteria yet. Like, I'm like crazy bag lady, like coming in with like 5, 6, 7 bags, like with all of my tools and stuff to make sure I'm able to like accomplish everything. And I look crazy. And like, especially before pre-COVID, I would take the TTC and like, it was just like wild. I'm sure I looked wild on the subway with all of my bags, but you got to do it. You got to be able to work on everyone.
Christina.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, because I get so worked up about these conversations, because so much of our training and conversations is pre-production, right? Like, what is the production bringing? What are the conversations they've had? And budget is such a big part of it. So have you thought of, if you're casting a multitude of shades of skin, what is the budget for hair and makeup? What are we like? What are you giving? But you know, it's not in my realm, in my avenue as intimacy coordinator, but it just is such an important conversation that before you even audition, what are the possibilities and where can you make sure that everybody has their makeup person and that you're hiring the right people to make your performers feel their best, because that is the end result, right? The best performance you capture on film is when people feel, you know, most able to work.
Yeah. And it's like, we're at that point now where it's like, luckily people are starting to learn to ask those questions beforehand. And hopefully that continues to do so, but we're also getting past the point of knowing, and it's to the point where we have to do. Like, I feel like it's super important, especially with what Keisha was saying. Like, how is it still happening where people have to like go in beforehand, do their own hair, and come ready? And it's not like that could be fine if, say, they were compensated for that time and for that extra work. Like, that is something that needs to be talked about as well, because not like, I do know how to work on like all types of hair. I obviously don't know how to re-dread or touch up like twists and stuff like that. I'm still learning, but we should have people with that knowledge to be able to be called. But also, it's like, you have to be able to pay those people their proper rates, because half the time people who are doing that in their salons are making way more money than coming to set and doing these crazy hours, working like doing 2 a.m. hair twists, and you're asking them to take a pay reduction to then come in and do these crazy hours and do these favors for you, and then you're not going to compensate them for it.
Wow. This is such a great discussion. I have to keep going, but there's so much to unpack with everything.
Yeah.
Christina, I wanna kind of circle back to being an intimacy coordinator, and you know, how folks first of all become accredited with it, and you know, the process of even people finding out that there is something such as intimacy coordinator that can be on set.
Yeah. So to answer that last part of your question, the first thing is I say to people, or actors especially, is you can advocate for yourself, because you know, a lot of times you audition and you don't know the full script or the full scope of what your character may be doing. Always ask that. I mean, we beg that we get brought on right in the beginning so that we can make sure at the auditions people are privy to all the information, like you will be asked to be nude here, or there will be a simulated sex, or there is kissing even during COVID, you know, that is an issue. So to advocate for yourself, just, you know, is there an intimacy coordinator involved? Have you heard of this role? Can it be? I believe ACTRA roles, or ACTRA contracts are definitely on board. Like, we're in conversation with them right now. And I say we, meaning the intimacy coordinators community. We're all having these conversations weekly, actually, what we can tell ACTRA, ask ACTRA, tell productions, or help us just get the word out. So yeah, you can advocate for yourself. As far as accreditation and working towards becoming an intimacy coordinator, most of us at present are qualified intimacy coordinators, trained, because it's a really passionate point of mine. You can't accreditate someone's life experience. And so, you know, I have 30 years in the business, and I've been choreographing, and, working with movement and touch and vulnerability. And I just am an empath, and I tend to steer that way anyway. So I was approached, by producers and my agent saying, have you heard of intimacy coordination? I think this would be good for you. So in 2019, I sort of dived in looking for it. There are two close by. One is in LA, and it's Intimacy, IPA, Intimacy Professionals Association, led by Amanda Blumenthal, that you can get accredited there in the States. I believe most of it is online, but then you do an in-person. But I will say, I had applied, I made it on the waiting list, but out of 200 people, they accepted 10. So it's really hard. And the one in New York by Alicia Rodis is Intimacy Directors and Coordinators. And that also has online courses to a certain point. And then you have to get yourself to New York to take sort of the choreography and the test to become accredited. So Intimacy Coordinators Canada is affiliated with them and have trained through them, and they will mentor you. It's about a 2-year process. And it's actually a luck of the draw to try and get into these courses. So you got to kind of be there at 7 o'clock in the morning when they release the program. And if you're the first of like 50 to get on, and there's 4 stages of it. So it's kind of a long process, which is great because you definitely, want all the knowledge. But on top of all of that, you need your mental health first aid, psychological training, sensitivity training. There's a lot going on in this course and in the training to make sure that you really keep everyone safe and considerate. But also, I love to mention, it's not just for the performers. Like, I really like to shout out to the crew, because I feel like they kind of get a bad rap. A lot of A-listing actors, when commenting about this, are like, oh, and you don't know who's watching or who tries to sneak in on a closed set. And I think, having worked on so many sets, a lot of crew are uncomfortable watching intimate scenes and moments like that, and they don't want to be there. So, and you don't know what's triggering for them either, and seeing things or commenting. So I really like to be mindful of that and just really keep that in mind too.
I was just going to jump in and say that one of the things, I've looked into intimacy coordination a little bit, because I also think that it would work for me as one of my jobs, one of my many jobs. But yeah, what I like about the process is that there's a lot of self-directed training, like you yourself have to go and get certified in these ways, and like, yes, we'll train you, but also you need to be doing the work. I love that. And specifically through my research, I know that the New York organization that you were talking about, they have a specific BIPOC scholarship. So you can apply as, folks with our experience. And I also know that, like you were saying, Christina, like, it's really hard to get in. But there is also that small amount of folks who are being encouraged in by way of equity.
Yes.
And I think that that's great.
And I'd love to shout out too, because, those are the 2 accredited, or who have claimed themselves, put a stamp on their process. But there is Intimacy Coordinators of Color by Ann James, who is incredible. She has, if you're interested, a podcast called Intimacy Choreographers in Conversation with Carly Westlake. It is an incredible first season, just to find out, if this is something you're interested in. But Ann James is great, like you said, for BIPOC and the Canadian. I mean, I have to talk about the Canadians as well. Not an accredited resource, but the National Society of Intimacy Professionals, NSIP, has just been created at the beginning of this year. And that is where this Canadian community of intimacy coordinators are really coming together to educate. And it's definitely on our plate, or on their plate as well, and all of us, to really reach out, because these scenes, all scenes, I feel like everything that's written, it needs to start on the page. Whereas like with intimacy, it's a lot of, and then they kiss, or, and then they have sex. And there's not a lot that we, are offered towards that part of the script. So if it's written with more detail, it'd be amazing. If directors, exactly like you just said, are interested in educating themselves in this stuff, so important. And it like starts there, and making sure that the culture you're representing in your writing, or the story you're telling, also, you're hiring the correct people. I'm not right for every job. You want to make sure that, because no one would know it, but my mother's Lebanese, my husband's Lebanese. I have a great connection with the Lebanese culture, but the way they make love, the way they talk about love, the way they is so different from the way, a cisgendered white person would write it. So it's so important to represent that way and bring on the right people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With that, actually, Mikey, I saw you unmiked. Come through.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I love how you were touching on about how you also want to make the crew feel comfortable too in those situations too. Because like, as we're slowly diversifying our crew as well as like our talent and stuff too, we all come from different backgrounds and different like different lives, different like paths of lives, and like people aren't really thinking about like how we came into this position or where we come from. And sometimes like we come from pasts, so we have our own pasts, and sometimes that kind of comes up in the stories if depending on what we're working on. And I think it's super important to like make everyone feel comfortable on the set, and like having an intimacy coordinator have that power and have that I guess understanding of that, and having that person to kind of protect all of us is super, super lovely. Because like some things can be, like you said, things can be triggering, like lots of different things can be triggering for all of us. And it's not just the people on the screen too, it's the people behind the cameras.
Yeah, I'd love to see an Oslo trained in the ways that we are with mental health, and to have them there helping, because I feel like a lot of us, again, in the community talk of ICs, of having an HR person, right? Of it not all falling on the shoulders of the intimacy coordinators. But I feel, so many hair and makeup people too, empaths, you're sitting there for so long, and you get to really know the performers and hear intricate parts of their stories and lives and where they come from. And so, you tend to take, or the wardrobe as well, in those vulnerable moments of dressing somebody, seeing somebody partially, in clothed and not, you're finding out like there's a lot of people that really care. And I don't think, I think it's just great to know that it takes a community to find that level of care, or to all be able to contribute to a safe and great space. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Keisha, I want to toss it back to you. When you're an actor, there are folks who have representation, there are folks who do not have representation. How do you navigate relationships with agents, perhaps, that you may have that are not versed on who you are or the nuances of your identity, and may want you to audition for roles that are very objectifying, or something that you're not comfortable with? And how do you have that conversation with that agent?
Tricky question. I think that part of it is recognizing what the agent's role is. So, you're the actor, and the agent is working with you, supporting you to build your career, right? And so, and they're really, their success is based on yours. So I think that agents and actors who know that both and work together are most successful. I think it's interesting. So for me, I'm signed with one of the older agencies in the city. So they're known as like, folks who've been here a long time. And with that comes maybe potentially how the industry has been working for a long time. And so when I signed with them and I had to check the male-female box, we had a conversation then like, hey, I actually identify as non-binary. Is there a place for that? And, I think especially I became more kind of able to have those conversations now, seeing how casting are casting something sometimes. So, you know, there are little lines that say like, this is a non-binary character, we prefer to hire a non-binary person, or what have you. And so those kinds of things actually got me confident enough to say like, hey, actually, yeah, like these roles are actually being prioritized for us, and I would really like to get those roles. And like, how do we, you know, have the conversation so that you know who I am and you know what I want to go for, so that if you see those roles, you're not passing them. And you know, oh yeah, Keisha would want to go for that. So that's been an interesting conversation that's just kind of been ongoing. I feel the same way about my queerness and how that gets kind of like represented or not represented. And so, yeah, it's a constant conversation, I would say. I noticed on one of the casting sites recently, I think it's Backstage, they had a really beautiful way of kind of like, I guess, differentiating categories. And so you could say, yes, I'm non-binary, and also, you know, I can be seen for these roles, or I can be seen for those roles. So, you know, just kind of like trying to move us forward in incrementally. So like, yes, I identify as non-binary, but sure, put me forward for these roles that are for women, because I feel like I can play that, or I don't want to play that, so please don't put me forward for those roles. But yeah, being able to, you know, self-describe, I think is really helpful. And I think just being in constant conversation is what's necessary to like bring everyone in the industry up to speed: agents, casting, you know, producers, everyone.
We have like 5 minutes before audience questions, and this is always a joke because I have so many more questions to ask all of y'all, and I just won't be able to get to it. So this is just a heads up for the audience. In 5 minutes, we'll be taking your questions, start percolating, start putting them in the comment section, then we will get to answering them in just a little bit. But in the interim, I do want to open up. These are two general questions for everybody in the room, and Keisha, because you were already talking, I want to hold it on you. This is something that I think is, you know, really pertinent. There are people who are currently being taught in different schoolings or by being mentored by other folks about your profession. And what would you recommend to these folks for them to incorporate more equitable practices, or to consider a different lens when they are being trained in the job that you're currently are in? Keisha.
Again, huge question. You know, so I feel like I can speak on film school. I feel like film school is a microcosm for the film industry. And so a lot of things came up there that come up in the industry. And it was interesting, like how I chose to decide to deal with them, because sometimes it's like, okay, well, there's this really ableist thing happening. Do I say something? Do I interject? Do I get accommodation? Knowing that oftentimes like their response is like, well, this is not what's going to happen in the industry, so suck it up. And like, and to a certain degree, like that's true, you know, like there aren't necessarily like grand guidelines for supporting actors with disabilities, right? Like maybe you'll get specifically cast if casting directors know these things, but like generally, like I would say this industry is not the most, you know, accessible. And so it's very tricky. But I do think that like, for me, it's like each situation I take on individually, and I pick my battles, and I push sometimes and I don't push other times, or I push at the end where I write a letter about all the things that went on. You know, there's just like different tactics, I think. And as an actor, we use different tactics. And I feel like in the industry, I also use different tactics depending on what's going on and what the situation is.
Okay. Mikey, what about you? Anybody learning in your profession, what would you tell them?
I would say keep in mind who you're pay attention to who you're working on and all that stuff, but also always keep in your mind who you're not working on and why you aren't working on them. Like whether that's because of casting, because the higher ups aren't bringing these people onto these projects, or is it because of your inability to also be able to work on these people? So keep in mind, you have to be able to work on all these people. So make sure you're getting the practice on everyone and all of these different aspects. Another problem with makeup school specifically is that they don't prioritize that. They haven't been prioritized. Like when I went to school, I had one day for working on darker skin tones. In all of the schooling we had in our 2 week, we had 2 weeks of hairstyling. None of it was on Afrocentric hair. None of it was on any sort of curly type of hair. Our Judy heads, which is our mannequin heads, were all pin straight. Like pin, yeah, they call it a Judy head, which honestly is actually really funny now that you think about it. It's a Judy head. And it's like pin straight hair. Like you're not going to get experience like that. No, not everyone you're going to go on to set with is going to have that pin straight hair. They're not going to have that like flawless, like that like smooth skin. They're not going to have that one shade of foundation you have in your kit. So you have to be able to have that knowledge and get that experience. And sometimes you have to search elsewhere. Like schooling isn't always the best option for sometimes like that, because they don't give you all that information. So make sure you're expanding and keeping that in mind when you're going into this job, and making sure you have that knowledge wherever you get it.
My experience was very interesting. I feel like, so I'm just going to shout out, if anyone's interested in intimacy coordination, reach out to me on Instagram, because it's very gatekeepy. I found it very, very hard to get the information, I think, to get accredited, to be that person, because I just wanted all the information. So yeah, please, I'm an open book. I will tell you as much as I can, because for the last 2 years, my husband's like, he felt like every day I was in school. I was just a podcast, a workshop or whatever. I was reading books, just trying to take it all in myself. So I think, yeah, just opening up, like people who are training to be more open, because I just would love everyone to have it. There is an amazing company. Sorry, I just thought myself. It's called Theatrical Intimacy Educators. And they're in the States, have so much work online, but their quote is like, we're trying to put ourselves out of business, because they want everyone to have this information. So I think that's really great. But I also wanted to comment, as far as actors or other people in the industry, to really consider your own consent and boundaries. And there's a great yes to no spectrum that Mia Shackner, I believe that's how you say her name, how they say their name. And it's really great education through them, just to know your own, because in this industry, I would assume as a makeup artist, as an actor, you push and push. It's like, yes, and you want to just be in the cycle, and then you burn out. So really thinking about yourself too, it's important to know your own boundaries and how far you want to give and things like that. So I hope that answered your question. Kind of all over. Okay.
Thank you so much. We're officially open for audience questions right now. So if you do have a question, please put it in the chat and we will get to answering it. Right now, I see things are populating. I haven't seen any questions just yet, which is very much a go ahead for me for asking other questions. So please, again, put your questions in the chat room and we'll get to answering them in just a little bit. Really waiting for y'all. A little bit could be right now. Oh, we have a question. Look at that. Look at this is what happens when you push people, y'all. So somebody asked, what inspired you all to get involved in the entertainment/media industry? And if given a chance to change your job now, would you? Why or why not? Christina, let's start with you.
I feel like I just changed my job, having been a choreographer and dancer, and really diving into this new role. So that's exciting. What brought me into it was my dance. I've been dancing since I was 3, and yeah, just the passion for communicating through movement, and then bringing me into film and TV. It just was like a natural cycle where sort of who you know, and the more the conversation is, and the choreographers that want to bring you on board, and just the cycle like that. Staying in the conversation is always a good way to move your career forward.
I started acting, got into acting because I realized that it was how I felt most alive. And what was the other question?
If you were given a chance to
stay in the
would
I change my job? No.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. It's mostly because I have so many jobs that I don't have to, like I can be an actor one day and I can be a director the next day. And so, yeah, it just gives me some flexibility. Like I've been through script supervisor in there sometimes, and production designer, like set is really my time to play. So no, I would never give it up for anything.
You can't change it if you have them all.
Yeah, exactly.
Mikey, come through. What about you?
For me, like I guess kind of falling into this industry was kind of like almost an accident for me. I never really I didn't grow up thinking I was going to be a makeup artist or like being like I want to be in this industry. But my family always had a love for movies, like regardless of anything we didn't have, we had movies and we watched movies a lot. So it's always been kind of important in my family. And even my brother's actually in film as well. He's a director and cinematographer. So it's kind of like in the family, I guess. But for me personally, I kind of just had like Halloween, I was like really into zombies, and it started off just me trying out how to become a zombie on myself. It looked awful. I have pictures and it's like really funny to look back at now. But like coming back, like it kind of like started out on the horror genre, but as I kind of started exploring that side of myself, I kind of fell in love more with like the beauty side of it as well. But I still kind of have that love of like the horror side of it. I still do like on-set effects. Like I do all the blood work and stuff. I did my first blood rig a couple weeks, like last month. So that was really fun. So I don't know. I love what I do. And like to answer your second question, I probably wouldn't change, to be honest. Cause like, I love I love my job because I'm able to have this artistic side of myself and be able to create these different looks and kind of do all this work with all these different people. And I also like love the social side of it too. Like I love having someone in my chair and having these conversations. Like it's really fun to me, and I like to keep it fun because like I don't know, I don't want to have like I never try to have like I don't know, what am I trying to say here? I don't know, like I love what I do, and like I love the kind of social side of it as well. Like it's such a fun job, and I like to kind of keep it that way. And like I don't know, I like it.
I think I just love to add, I think that's such a good point, that this industry or our space or where you work in general, but should be a joyful place, right? You don't want to dread going in. You don't want to dread doing the intimacy work. You don't want to, so the way your energy, I just feel it through the screen, Mikey, and all of you are so lovely. But yeah, I love that you said that, just to bring that joy into the film industry is so stellar.
I have 2 more questions, both from the audience. One is a fire question, very quick, very fast off the top. What is your favorite genre to work in? Mikey.
Ooh, that's a fun one. I feel like I've been working on I've been getting opportunities to work in more period pieces. And like, I feel like that's kind of a really fun way to kind of expand my mind and like shape my mind in different ways, because I kind of like been trying out different things that I haven't tried out before, and trying to like do it's a lot more like research based. Like you're doing so much research on like references, icons from that era, like all these different colors, what were they using back then. I think it's like super fun to kind of do that research and like get all of those references and like figure out and create these different characters depending, and they all could be totally different depending on who they are in that time period. Yeah, like are they someone in the fashion industry in the 70s, or are they someone who's like just a housewife, or just like, you know what I mean? Like there's so many things to kind of really consider to kind of create that character. I don't know. I love period stuff.
Period piece. Christina.
I love period pieces too. I was going to be like, if I could do something like Bridgerton, like I would love that. But I usually go for comedy. So if I could do comedy for life, that would be forever.
Amazing. Keisha.
Sci-fi, fantasy, dark comedy.
Love it. All right. This is more of a juicy question, and it's going to be our last question. I think it's the best to end on. What advice would you give for people who are emerging artists?
I guess that kind of what I was touching on before, just like making sure you have that knowledge to work on everyone. Like keep in mind, like what, if you're going to school, keep in mind what they're not teaching you. If you're already working, keep in mind who you're not working on. Like keeping in mind all of these different things to make sure that you're able to work on everyone and make everyone feel comfortable in your chair, because that's what I consider my job to be, is to make sure that the talent is comfortable to be in my chair and that we're all feeling safe, because we have to start off the day like we're putting people out into the mood to where they have to be for the rest of the day. So I think that's super important. And also, there isn't, for anyone trying to get into makeup artistry as well, like it's really expensive to get into makeup school. That's not the only way. There are a multitude of ways to get into being a makeup artist. And I found I actually got a lot of my most important knowledge from working in makeup retail too. So that's always an avenue to get in there if you don't have the money to go to makeup school. I was only able to go to because my reserve was able to sponsor me to go to school. So otherwise I would not have been able to. But retail, you get to learn, you have to be able to work on whoever comes to that door and make them feel comfortable, so you learn it real quick.
So definitely echoing Mikey's sentiment of like, look for what's not there, like pay attention to what's missing. I also would say like, don't listen to anybody. / you can listen to them only if you're like using it for fuel to do whatever you want to do. Because the amount of times I got told like, I can't do this, or I'm not going to make a living, or XYZ, or I can't do both. And I'm just, thank you, but I'm going to keep going and doing my thing and doing what I want to do and what I love to do. So yeah, if you're emerging, just keep emerging, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say that just about consent and boundaries, again, go back to knowing that, but also if you're in the business as an actor, as from a intimacy coordinator's point of view, that your consent is always reversible. It's always changing. Every day can be a different day. And so communicate those things. And I always say never be afraid to communicate, but I know it can be intimidating with all the power dynamics that are on set. But know that what's in your rider can't be changed 48 hours before what's being filmed. So if people are asking you to do stuff, right before or even a day before, you need to have time to really think about it. So if you're on an actor set, the best practices through actor is you need 48 hours to give your consent. Having said that, I was just on a film and, we were filming on a dock, and the way the lighting was, we had to change the angle, which wasn't working with our actress's rider. And so the discussion happened in that moment, and we took 20 minutes, and it became what it was. So it can still be a conversation is what I mean. But yeah, ask questions, lots of questions. Don't be afraid.
Well, I want to thank all of y'all in the room for spending this hour with me, having an important discussion, having the patience to have a discussion, feeling safe enough to share what you share. And then also, knowing that this conversation isn't over and that it can continue online. I also want to remind everybody at home that you could stay tuned with all things FOFs going on throughout the week. The Future of Film Showcase ends this Thursday, and it's streaming on CBC Gem in Canada. So feel free to watch all of those films over the next 48 hours before it gets pulled. And I also want to thank, of course, the VOFs team, all behind the scenes, for making this possible. So much work goes behind this. This is an inaugural panel, so it's thought about throughout the entire year. And with that, let's be on our way out. Thank you for those tuning in at home. Thank you for those signing in here. And everyone have a lovely afternoon and enjoy the last day of VOFs. Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much, Samah, for being a wonderful person and guiding us through this conversation.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks everyone.